Idaho Matters podcast is brought to you by St. Luke's On-Demand Virtual Care, which allows patients to see a provider from their home using a computer or smartphone with on-demand care for common ailments such as a cough, sore throat, or a sinus issue. More information at stlukesonline.org. Idaho is a big state and it covers a lot of territory. Idaho Matters wants to take you to every corner of the Gem State by visiting all 44 counties, and we need your help to do that. Email us your story ideas at idahomatters@boisestate.edu for our new series we're calling Idaho 44. And be sure to join us each weekday at noon and 8 on Idaho Matters and travel the state with us. From the studios of Boise State Public Radio News, I'm Gemma Gaudette. More Idaho Matters right now. This summer, get ready to be swept away to Dust Bowl, Kansas for the story of Auntie Em, because long before Dorothy visited Oz, her aunt, Emily Gale, had an unforgettable adventure. And this story is being told in the new novel, Before Dorothy. And we are lucky enough to have New York Times bestselling author Hazel Gaynor joining us today to talk more about her latest creation. Hazel, it is such a pleasure to have you join us.
Likewise, Gemma. Thank you so much for having me.
Okay, I am going to make an assumption that you're a fan of The Wizard of Oz, maybe even Wicked.
Oh my goodness, I think fan would be an understatement. I've absolutely adored this world since I was a little girl who grew up with the Wizard of Oz movie every Christmas Day. It was a kind of TV staple in my home in Yorkshire, England. So what a treat to be in a new era of the Wicked movie, and to have written Before Dorothy, which steps into that world, is just, it's an absolute dream. And I still can't quite believe I've written the book. So I'm very excited.
So do you have a memory of the first time you watched The Wizard of Oz? And I ask you this because I have a very vivid memory of watching it.
Fascinating. I wait to hear.
Yeah. I was 4 years old. I was 4 years old down in our basement with my older siblings, and they were watching Wizard of Oz. And the scene with those monkeys, I have to tell you, it has traumatized me for my entire life. Like my entire life. Even when I sit down I can't watch that scene. So I'm so curious. But what's interesting to me is I do think that this land of Wizard of Oz, it's had an impact on so many of us.
Yeah, and I think it's because of those powerful memories. I was a similar age. I think The Wizard of Oz was first shown on TV in the UK. I think it was December 1975. And I was the same age as you were. And I don't have a distinct memory of that first Christmas, but very familiar memories sitting on the settee in the front room, just the rolling credits at the beginning, that kind of swirling choral voice. And of course, the Wicked, which for me, the shocking moment was when Dorothy's house is tumbling through the cyclone and Miss Gulch cycles past the window, and then she transforms into the Wicked Witch with the broom. And I literally had to hide behind the cushions. And just the music is enough to freak me out still. So I think, those memories, they're core memories, aren't they? That something really profound. And I'd never heard a tornado. I'd never seen Kansas, but, and it just was so strong a memory, and the songs and the stories, and you're rooting for Dorothy. And I think for a lot of people, that's why, this story has stayed with them all of their lives. And it's incredible to see these reimaginings and stepping into the world in a slightly different way. But with that, it's kind of like going back and meeting an old friend, but in a new part of their life. So isn't it amazing, those memories that we have?
They really are. And I want to talk a little bit about Auntie Em herself. Because one of the things that I always thought about growing up watching this was, how come Dorothy's being raised by her aunt?
Yeah.
And
I'm the question. That's the question I asked.
And so okay. So I'm wondering, as you were thinking about this and formulating this story, Was that a question you always had growing up watching this?
To be honest, I don't think I ever questioned it. It was just that was where Dorothy lived, and she lived with her Auntie Em and Uncle Henry, and that was that. And I don't think I actually ever questioned that. I mean, when Gregory Maguire's Wicked came out, it was the most incredible take on this story. Nobody had ever thought about, well, why is the Wicked Witch wicked? And genius. And I've always been interested as a writer in those origin stories. I've always been fascinated
Mm.
by them and always just wanted to find that kind of the question that nobody had ever asked. And it was when I was noodling around with ideas for this, what would become my 12th novel. And I picked up a copy of Wicked and thought, well, that was genius. The Wizard of Oz reimagining has been done. I went for a walk and literally the name Auntie Em popped into my mind. And I raced back home and researched her part of the original L. Frank Baum book. And we meet her
Hmm.
very early on, and she's described as somebody who had come to the prairie as a very young, pretty wife with colour in her cheeks, but the years and the prairie had aged her. And that was a question, oh my goodness, why has she changed so much? And the second question, which is never definitively answered, why is Dorothy living with Auntie Em and Uncle Henry? And it's not even clear whether they are maternal or paternal, or is this a term of endearment? Is it so the questions are there. So that was my, I mean, it's gold dust for a novelist, and I write historical fiction. So to go to a place, I've set this book in the Dust Bowl, which really
Hmm.
came from that line in the Baum book about the years have changed her. And that to me, what happened in the prairies around, a time of hardship, the Dust Bowl was the perfect setting. And so, yeah, that question, which I suppose we just go with it, don't we? But why is Dorothy, where are Dorothy's parents? And why is this domestic situation arisen? So it was fascinating to have that spark of inspiration and then run away with it.
Well, and that quote from the original book, as you mentioned, when Aunt Em came to live there, she was a young, pretty wife. The sun and wind had changed her too. She was thin and gaunt and never smiled now.
Yeah, yeah,
That was, I mean, because I've never read the book, I've seen the movie, and there was something just in that line of she never smiled now.
yes.
So when you read that, walk me through kind of your thought process then, right? Because all of a sudden it's like, how did she become who she is?
Yeah. And that again, I think we most of us know Aunt Em from how she's depicted in the MGM movie, and she's quite a
Hmm.
brusque, stern woman. She doesn't seem particularly warm. She's very busy. And so when I read those lines in the original book, and I'd love always go back to the source material of anything if I can. And that line, why, instantly, why, what has happened? So there was this incredible blank canvas, really, because she's really written about no more than that, because then obviously Dorothy goes off to the Emerald City
Hmm.
and she comes back. Emily has sort of the final lines as well. So I wanted to think about, okay, what circumstance might have meant a woman was raising her niece, if that's who Dorothy is.
Hmm.
What might have happened in her life that means that she's raising this child but doesn't find any joy in that. So
Hmm.
again, just I suppose the connective tissue of looking back at the source material, what do we know? Where can I connect the dots? So let's think about, where did Auntie Em and Dorothy first get to know each other? How has Dorothy come to Kansas? Has she always lived in Kansas? Has Emily always lived in Kansas? And then I started thinking about, okay, who were the prairie farmers? Lots of them were immigrants, lots of Irish immigrants. And that brought me right back to connecting the Emerald City with the Emerald Isle.
Mm.
And of course, in Ireland, we have lots of stories of myth and folklore. So again, I asked
Uh-huh.
questions of myself. Why does Dorothy imagine this fantastical world of, the Munchkins and speaking lions? And that seemed to me come from the sort of history of folklore and fairy tales and the little people that we talk about here in Ireland. So it all the connective tissue sort of came together for me, and it was just a gift of a book to inhabit this world I've loved. And I think when you've loved something for so long, it just feels like just a pleasure to go back to it every day. So
Yeah.
work was fun for those couple of years writing the book.
So, as you mentioned, you write historical fiction, and just listening to you right now, I mean, what a treat in a way to be able to, as you said, okay, we know certain things, but you can expand on that. Yet at the same time, you've said it during the Dust Bowl, during the Depression. This was a very turbulent time in the U.S.'s history. So, what is it like to be able to kind of go off on this one part where you can use your imagination, but at the same time, you do have to ground it in
Mm.
in history?
Yeah, and that to me is the key word. It was this book was always going to be grounded in history and in reality. So really the opposite of The Wonderful Wizard of Oz. There's nothing fantastical here. This is very gritty, it's very real. It's almost the inverse. Auntie Em's world is the inverse of
Mm,
Dorothy's sort of adventure to Oz. And it was really for me, it was really important that this, I mean, this is very much a book for adults. It's historical fiction. It's a very serious subject matter, the Dust Bowl, this pivotal part of American history. So that was key for me, that this book stood alone, if you like, outside of the Oz universe. And to, I suppose, think about some of the parallels. So in The Wizard of Oz, obviously the malevolent force is the Wicked Witch. To me, the mirror of that in the Dust Bowl is the prairie. The prairie is almost the
hmm.
malevolent force. This is what we fear, what Auntie Em fears is the land, is the landscape, is these dark, brooding, destructive dust storms as well as the tornadoes. So, yeah, it was really important to me to understand what life was like for prairie farmers at that time, particularly women, and particularly women who were raising children, whether it was their own children or a relative's child or something else. And the sorts of fears that obviously we know Dorothy has when she meets the Wicked Witch and she's desperate to get home. What
Mm,
would what would reality be to match that? So it was the prairie, the Dust Bowl, came to me quite quickly as a very grounded, rooted
yeah.
place, very earthy subject matter to contrast. And there's lots of parallels there about, the growth of the land and the growth of a woman, whether she does or doesn't have children, how that might affect her. So there was lots that came to me, I guess, from the iconic setting of Kansas and why Dorothy is so keen to get back home. But what does home mean? And what does home mean to sort of a displaced family? So there was lots to explore.
And to bring it full circle, that iconic line, "There's no place like home."
Yeah.
And how does that fit into what you wrote? Because again, we learn about, Emily, Auntie Em, and we learn about home, right? And
Mm.
what
Mm.
does that look like metaphorically, literally? So did you also kind of take that into account and maybe wanting people to really think more deeply about home and place?
Absolutely. And it is that is the line, isn't it? And it's repeated. And it to me, that was
Hmm.
one of the big questions that framed this whole book is, what is home and what is that yearning, that longing to return to? Is it a place? Is it a moment? Is it a person? And so having Emily come from a family of Irish immigrants who have left their home to start a new life in America, she then leaves her first home in America to move to another home in Kansas with Henry. And it's about how do we change home and what does that mean? So it was really interesting for me to explore. I'm originally from England. I left home to move to Ireland when I met
Hmm.
my now husband, and that sort of displacement and finding your way in a new community. So it was really pivotal to the themes of the book about what do we mean when we say home? Is it a place? Is it the people we're with? Is it a feeling? And that's quite a challenging question to answer, but always again going back to the source material and sort of following Dorothy's adventures and her realization that actually what she was looking for when she wanted to go over the rainbow, because she
Hmm.
found so stifling, was there all the time. So that it was really interesting to develop Dorothy and Em's relationship to sort of learn from each other.
Well, I have to say, it has been such a treat to talk with you. This book is wonderful. I love that we get to learn so much more about Auntie Em. So thank you so much for taking time to talk with us, but for writing this book. It has just been such a treat. So thank you for your time today.
Thank you so much for the great questions, and I hope readers will enjoy it.
Well, thank you. We've been talking with Hazel Gaynor. She is the New York Times best-selling author, talking about her newest novel, Before Dorothy. It is out this summer. And that'll do it for this episode of Idaho Matters. Thanks so much for listening. And just a reminder, you can find all of our episodes wherever you get your podcasts.